Hey, welcome everybody to my second live broadcast of 2021. I am super excited that you are here with me tonight. Thank you for spending your evening with us and talking about continuing care. So this is probably one of the top three core systems in your dental practice. And so I thought it very relevant to talk about this for our second broadcast. Our last broadcast was about understanding your KPIs. And that one was very well received and had so many great comments. And so this one is diving into more of your systems. And so when I'm working with a practice, you know, there's a lot of things that go into the continuing care system. However, I work off of the KISS method. So keep it simple, stupid is my motto when it comes to continuing care, because the simple you make it, the better it's going to work. And so we're going to dive into that tonight. But first, before I even dive into everything, I want to share some love out to my trusted partners who have helped put this event on tonight. So I want you to know that I don't pick these trusted partners because they pay me to do these events. That's not why I pick them. I pick them because of their relationship with practices. I pick them because they have solutions that can help your practice. And I pick them also because they have integrated products that sync really well with Dentrix. I don't pick any partners that don't sync with Dentrix. I mean, why would I? I mean, I'm Dentrix 24/7. So I pick these partners because they are trustworthy and they are honorable and they are my friends. And I pick them because I love working with them, and I know that you will too. And so throughout the evening, I will be talking about solutions that can help your practice with their help. Now, of course, I don't work for these companies, and so I'm going to leave it up to you to reach out to them. And so if you scroll down in this video, so you're watching me on the same landing page where you registered. And so if you scroll down a little bit in the landing page, what you will find is that there are logos on this landing page, and they are all hyperlinked to a page where you can gather more information. So as we go throughout this evening, you are going to say, oh my gosh, I need to reach out to them. And so just click on their logo, and then there's a form that you can fill out to get more information, okay? So that's kind of how you can tap into their resources. So super excited to have them on board. I thank them for their friendship and their support, and we're going to talk a little bit more about their services throughout the evening. Now, I want to start off by kind of talking to you a little bit about what's actually going on in the industry first that is relevant to your continuing care system, because this affects your business. This affects how you run your business. So I love this study from the ADA Health Policy Institute. I use it in a lot of my presentations because I think it's fascinating. And so what I'd like for you to do is there is a comment box in there on the event. Or if you're on Facebook Live, I want you to kind of think about this for a second. Reasons why high-income adults with private insurance do not plan to visit the dentist in the next 12 months, okay? You can see on my little graph there that there's a few options. You can see that one of the options is 53.2% of high-income adults will not visit the dentist within the next 12 months, even though they have private insurance. So what do you think the reason is? Kind of put that in the comment box and put it on the comments in the Facebook if you're watching us on Facebook Live. What do you think it is? Do you think it's time? Do you think it's money? Do you think it's fear? Huh? Well, the answer is actually, my mouth is healthy and I do not need dental care. That is the number one reason why your high-income adults with private insurance will not visit the dentist. So my first pro tip for you is going to be, we need to connect with our patients on a level where we are adding value to our services. We need to be talking to our patients about why dental care is important, because if 53.2% of them aren't going to the dentist because they think their mouth is healthy, boy, they've got another thing coming, because the mouth is like the dirtiest place in the whole body. And so we need to start emphasizing that a little bit more. So I have some tips for that. Now, the next thing I want to talk about before we dive into our Dentrix software is kind of generational, like what's going on with our patients as far as patient retention goes. Now, I'm not an expert on different generations, but I do have some statistics for you about our patients, like the Gen Xers. Okay, I'm a Gen Xer. And 31% of the Gen X population will switch dentists in the next 3 years. Okay, that's pretty high. That's a third of your patients are going to switch dentists in the next 3 years in my age bracket. Millennials, they're 47% going to switch dental providers in the next 3 years, and 54% already have. And our baby boomers, only 23%, they're a little bit more loyal than the millennials. Now, we also have to remember that our millennials are going to be turning 40, okay? So, they're not the 20, 30 somethings like we used to think. And so some of the millennials, the first group of millennials that are coming up are going to start turning 40. And so, those are our 30 somethings right now in our practice. And then the baby boomers, they're the ones that are retired but they still might be leaving your practice, 23%. So what can we do as a dental practice to help save this relationship? Well, according to a few studies that I looked up, the number one thing that we can do with our patients is to have better connectivity. Okay, so you like all my phones here, everybody has a different kind of phone. And so how can we stay connected to our patients is, number one, answer your phone. Okay, studies show that offices, 30% of your phone calls go unanswered. That's a study done by our friends at CallForce. So answer your phone, okay? And then the top 10% of dental practices answer 95% of their calls, okay? So that is a huge statistic. 30% of your calls go unanswered. So we need to find a way to pick up our phone, okay? And then post-op calls are always important. It doesn't have to just be surgery. It can be that a patient came in for SRP or scaling and root planing, and your hygienists are making post-op calls. So any way that we can connect with our patients is a good thing. And then returning their calls. I think I read another study, I didn't put it in this slide, but that if a new patient or if a patient sits on hold for longer than a minute, then they might call someone else. And so that's another big one. And then we need to have two-way texting, okay? I don't know about you, but my phone is with me all the time. And so if you text me, I'm more likely to answer you back than if you call me, okay? Because a lot of times I don't recognize the phone number, and then, then I might not reach back out to you. So, and then 88% of millennials prefer texting. So that the younger generation, even after millennials, our 20-somethings are wanting to text more, and they're wanting online tools. And so our next slide is all about online tools, because our patients want to not only connect with you, but they want things to be easy. They want things to be on their schedule, okay? Most of your practices are open probably 8 to 5, Monday through Thursday, maybe Monday through Friday. Unless you're that practice in Spokane, that's Harkin Dental is open 7 to 7, 7 days a week. But most of you don't have office hours like that. And so most of you are open, 8 to 5 or 8 to 4. And so we need to add live chat to our websites. And so when I added live chat to my own website, I mean, my referrals just exploded. I could not believe how many people were on my website after hours doing live chat. And so, according to our friends at Simplify, 32% of live chat happens after hours. So imagine the connection that you can have with your patients, whether it's a new patient or a patient of record. Think about the connections that you can make with your patients after hours when you're not even there. You have a trusted partner like Simplify to help you answer those messages for patients that are on your website. And so live chat, I think, is a no-brainer right now. And live chat is something that is definitely a must in the dental practice right now. And then, of course, online booking. I get so jealous when I'm teaching with offices and I'm in the office and they have online booking, and I just love seeing the appointments like drop right into the appointment book. And for me, being a high D personality on the DISC scale, you would think that I wouldn't like online booking. You would think that I would be like so in control of my appointment book that I would not allow a third party to actually drop an appointment on my appointment book. I would be like, oh my gosh, can you believe that even happened? But think about how much that can help your continuing care system, how that can fill your schedule if you have patients that can book a hygiene visit just like they book their dinner reservations. I mean, it's amazing. And so there's a study out from the ADA, a third of appointment requests come in after hours. So just think, if your patients are on your website requesting an appointment, then your team has to then follow up with that request. And then by the time you get back to the patient, the appointment might be gone. Just think if your patients could not just request the appointment, but actually book the appointment, schedule the appointment, and get a confirmation about that appointment. Just think how easy and efficient that is for your team. So what I want you to do is, if online booking is on your radar, scroll down on this link on this page and tap into Next Health, because they have a phenomenal online booking tool, and so does Patient Engage. So there's Dentrix Patient Engage, and there's Next Health online booking tools that are available for you for your Dentrix software. They drop appointments right into the appointment book. So don't be afraid. I know if I was working in a practice, I'd be worried about patients being able to book when, it's not the correct spot, but you get to dictate where all these appointments go. You get to dictate, where the openings are. So enough about that. I just get so excited talking about that. Electronic forms, a must, okay? Out in the industry, they kind of call me the questionnaire queen, because I love questionnaires in Dentrix. But there's also another player on the field, NLive Dental Forms, which was acquired by Next Health just recently. So NLive Forms and the Dentrix questionnaires all integrate with the Dentrix software. They all sync with your health history. They all sync with your family files. So definitely, if you were looking for electronic forms, definitely look at on this webpage, go to the Patient Engage or the Next Health again, because they both have electronic forms that sync with Dentrix. Okay, and then another way to have some online tools is you may have patients that come to your website that don't have dental insurance. And so they may want to see what kind of options you have for memberships. I know that for me, I've been uninsured for many, many years. And as to have a membership plan where I can get services, recurring services. I mean, just think about how that would affect your patient retention number. If you had patients in your membership group where you had them kind of locked in, and then they come back because they've already paid for it because they're part of your membership group. So definitely check out Clear. Clear is also on this landing page. Definitely look at Clear if you want to tap into their services for membership plans. And then we're going to dive into your software. I know there's a lot of tips I'm going to give you to maximize your continuing care, optimize your ReCare system in Dentrix. So like I said, with your setup, I use the KISS method. Okay, it is the best. It makes your system work seamlessly. For accurate reports, just for ease of onboarding new team members, all that. And then we're going to look at some reports for your weekly to-dos, your weekly systems, and then how to track your patient retention. Okay, so patient retention is probably one of my top 5 KPI, key performance indicators that you really want to be optimizing in your software. So numbers tell a story, and patient retention is one of the key numbers that you need to be tracking. I'll never forget, I tell this story a lot. I have a practice in the Bellingham area of Washington State, and I was working with this doctor, and he was so funny. He's like, 100% of my patients pre-schedule their next appointment. None of our patients leave without scheduling an appointment. And I'm like, fantastic. I think that's amazing. So let's check your number. And so we looked at his patient retention in the Dentrix software, and it was like 66%. And I'm like, doctor, you might want to sit down. And I made him sit down before I told him the number. Now, I know that some of you might be saying, can we really trust that number? Yes. The patient retention number in Dentrix is one of the most accurate numbers in Dentrix because it's tied to a code, and it's all about tracking that perio or the Profi code. So I trust that number 100%. I'm going to show you how to do it. All right, we're going to jump into our Dentrix software. Now, for those of you that are registered, you will get a tip sheet. I think I created like a 4 or 5 page tip sheet for you that kind of wraps up everything that we're going to talk about tonight. And then my good friends, John Stamper at Dentalcast Productions is going to take a few days with the recording and put together the recording. And then I will also send that out to you probably a few days after we're done here. Probably take a few days for this team to get that all wrapped up and packaged up with a big bow. And then I'll send that out to you guys. So let's switch over to our Dentrix software. I'm going to start with practice setup. So you can see now we're in Dentrix. I want to let you know that we are using a tutor database. So this is a practice database. I don't have a large live database like you guys do. So I think I have like maybe 33 active patients, and I'm also working off Dentrix G7.4. So if you see something that happens in our presentation in Dentrix that is different than your software, it's probably just because we're on a different version than each other. And so I just want to let you know that we are using different softwares. Now, before I get started, I also want you guys to know that we will be doing some prize giveaways throughout the evening. So I'm going to go through setup first, and then we will do a prize giveaway, okay? So the first thing I'm going to tap into is on the Office Manager. And so many of you probably already know that the continuing care setup is here on the Office Manager. Now, I'm going to give you some tips that you may not know, okay? I'm also going to give you some tips for best practices. Like I said, I work off the KISS method, so I keep things very simple, user-friendly, easy to onboard new team members because we're not making it complicated. I want to keep it simple. So I'm going to give you some best practices, information that you can definitely take back to your practice right away. These tips will help you immensely starting Monday morning. So if you go into your continuing care setup, so this is what it looks like. This is the default setting. So like I said, I'm in a tutor database. And so my tutor database is constantly being updated. So I don't ever really have a chance to customize it, but I do want to show you a couple things in this setup that will make a huge difference in how you schedule your ReCare patients. So first of all, in this window, you only need one Profi and one Perio, okay? So recently, I was working with an office that was working also with a consultant. And so I was the trainer for the office, but they're working with a practice management consulting company. And so the consultant wanted to schedule or wanted to create, a Perio 3, a Perio 4, a Perio 6, a Profi 4, a Profi 6, a Profi 12. And I'm like, time out here, okay? So I didn't want to step on her toes because, she was the consultant for the practice, but I also wanted to give her some recommendations of how the continuing care system can work better in the practice. And so best practices is to have one Perio and one Profi, and I'll show you why. The reason why is that the Profi continuing care and the Perio continuing care, every continuing care has to be attached to a code, okay? So if I go to my codes, so if I pull up my Profi code, the D1110, you'll notice here right in the center of this window, see the auto continuing care is set to Profi. I can't attach it to a Profi 3, a Profi 4, a Profi 6, a Profi 12. I can't attach the code to multiple continuing care types. And so if you create multiple continuing care types, then you also have to create multiple procedure codes. And so that just gets too complicated. And then it doesn't work well. It doesn't work right. And so the simplest way is to use one Profi, one Perio maintenance. And then I'll show you what to do if a patient veers off of that schedule. So again, for your Profi, one Profi, okay, another tip I'm going to give you is also see right here in the middle of this box where it says provider. Okay, so how many times have you scheduled a continuing care appointment or a ReCare appointment, hygiene visit, and you are putting the procedures in the appointment, and then you go in to edit it, and it flips the provider back to the doctor? Yeah? How many? Put a big like on that if that's happened to you. Yeah? I know, it happens a lot. So here's my pro tip for you is come into your continuing care type setup and change the provider to provider 2, okay? The reason being is provider 1 is always attached to your doctor, always attached to a primary provider, which is a doctor. Provider 2 is always going to be a hygienist. So provider 2 is who do we want this patient's preferred hygienist. And so if you switch that to provider 2, then it's not going to keep looking at the provider 1 anytime you change the appointment. Now, One thing I do want to remind you, though, is if you've been using Dentrix for a while, it's probably going to take about 6 months for this to actually kind of kick in. So I don't want you to think that this is going to be some magical wand thing, but it will help in the future. And if you are brand new to Dentrix, this should be part of your setup, is change that provider to provider 2. And I would recommend that you go in, and if you're tracking x-rays with the continuing care, I would go in and I would change all of these to provider 2. Okay. It will help so the appointments don't flip back to the doctor anytime you make some changes. Okay. So that's one of my pro tips for you. All right. Next thing I want to is show you if a patient, so I told you best practices is not to make Profi 3, Profi 4, Profi 6. Okay. But let's go to our appointment book. Now, let's say you have a patient that comes in and you have this patient, perio maintenance patient, and our default perio maintenance continuing care is defaulted to 4 months, but Shelly should come in every 3 months. Okay. So the way that you would do that is go to her family file and change it for her. Okay. So go to her family file and go into her perio continuing care right here, and then edit her continuing care. Okay. If you go into this due date, then you can drop her down to a 3-month due date. All right. And now she's on a 3-month due date. So now when you set that complete, when I set her complete and I go to schedule her next visit, I'm going to give the exam to the doctor. When I go to set that complete and it goes, if I want to create her next appointment, then it's going to, oh, I guess I didn't have the perio in there. Then it's when I go to set complete and I go to pinboard it, it's going to take me out 3 months instead of 4 months. Okay. All right. So that's the setup. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is optimizing your appointment book, your scheduling for your continuing care. Okay. So let me just show you probably the number one thing that you need to make sure happens in your hygiene visits is, so let's open up Martin here. Here's Martin Winters. A couple things I want to show you here. The most important thing is that the Profi in the procedure in the reason box will link up the Profi continuing care. All right. That's probably the number one most important thing about these hygiene appointments, is that the continuing care is linked up to the appointment. The reason that's important is because if you go to run a continuing care list of overdue, unscheduled patients, which we're going to do in a second, Martin is going to show up on a unscheduled list if that continuing care is not linked up to the appointment. Okay. So what I would do is, if you are unsure if your appointments are linked up, just double click into the appointment, and the Profi should always be linked up to the Profi. This continuing care box should never be empty. Okay. For hygiene, Profi, perio maintenance. Okay. A second thing in this window that is important, not the most important, but it's still important, is see this checkbox right here that says use reason to auto update continuing care. Okay. See how mine's not checked? Okay. You always want that checked. What that does is when I go to set complete this appointment, then if that's checked, then it's going to ask me, do you wish to make the next appointment? And then I'm going to say, yes, I do. Now, if that's not checked, then it's not going to ask you that question. Okay. Just simple as that. Okay. So 2 pro tips there. Make sure that your Profi or your continuing care is linked up to the appointment, and double check that that's always connected up there. So if I go and set this complete, post set complete, I'm going to give the exam to my doctor, and I'm going to set complete. And I get this message that says, would you like to create the continuing care appointment? I would say yes. Yes, I would. And then see how it links up the continuing care. It's already checked. So that is kind of the next thing I want to talk a little bit about is I still have a lot of practices where the hygienists don't schedule the next appointment. A lot of times the patients are still going up to the front and the hygienist still has to hand off to the front and explain what do they need next, and they need a 4-month, and they need bite wings, and they need an exam, and we're going to check number 2. And so what if it was so easy that your hygienist could just schedule the next appointment, while they're waiting for the doctor to come in for the exam? It is so easy because of the way that the continuing care is linked up together. Then you can basically set complete as soon as I say the patient then needs an exam, and then I pinboard that. See, when I added the exam, see how it didn't flip back to the doctor? If I pinboard that, then it's going to take me out 6 months, and it took me out to December 6th. Okay. So it's super easy if your hygienist, if all the pieces are in place and your hygienist goes to set complete the appointment, if all of this is connected up correctly, setting complete is easy because, you know what you did in the appointment. Let's say that you did an exam, bite wings, and you also did some fluoride. We could add fluoride in here. See how the provider doesn't flip back to the doctor? So cool. Okay. I'm just going to put this back into 60 minutes. Whoops. And then when I set complete, because the checkbox is there, because the continuing care is linked up, as soon as I hit post set complete, then it's going to give me this window. I'm going to give the exam to the doctor, like most of you do. And then when I set complete, it's going to ask me, do you want to make the next appointment? Yes, I do. All right. And then it automatically puts the Profi in there. Then I can put the exam and I can click OK. And then I can pinboard it. And then it takes me out to December 6th. And then I can just drag and drop them into the schedule. I mean, how easy is that? That's the KISS method right there. Keep it simple. If it's simple, then your hygienist will do it because they'll have time. If it's simple, then it works. It links everything up together the way it's supposed to be. So, all right. So next, what I want to talk about is how do you stay connected to your patients, and what can we do in Dentrix to follow up with patients that are not scheduled? Okay. So there's a couple of reports I want to go through with you. Now, whenever I'm working through with teams, I built a course, the daily, weekly, monthly workflow course. So weekly, there's a couple reports in Dentrix that you and your team should be working on a regular basis. So the first one we're going to look at is the unscheduled list. Now, I have some rules for this list. So this list think of this list as a short-term holding bucket for appointments, okay? Now, you see I've got one appointment on the pin board, okay? The pin board is even a shorter holding bucket. Like the pin board, patients should not sit on the pin board unless you're on the phone with them or you are rescheduling and they're standing in front of you. Okay, that's how long patients just sit on the pin board. Now, the unscheduled list, I would say patients can sit on the unscheduled list for maybe 3 or 4, maybe 3 months. Okay, 3 months gives you enough time to call the patient back 3 times. Okay, and if they're sitting on the unscheduled list for longer than 3 months, then you should kick them off the list. Okay, because if they're not calling you back, kick them off the list. So then they're going to get reminders again. They'll get reminders from your patient engaged software or your Next Health software. Okay, so they will get reminders. Now, The unscheduled list is usually patients that have broken an appointment, they've missed an appointment, or maybe they need an appointment now and you wait, will call them to the unscheduled list. So if you go up here to appointment lists and you click in this drop-down menu, then you'll go to your unscheduled list. Now, I love to do online assessments with offices because I want to see kind of how you're using Dentrix, what you're using, what you're not using. And the unscheduled list is one of those lists that can sometimes get out of control. And then nobody in the office uses it. And so when you get back to your practice, either tomorrow or Monday, because, we usually don't work weekends, when you get back to your practice, I want you to open up your unscheduled list. And if there are appointments on there that are over a year old, then we need to get rid of, you need to probably purge the list. But this list is a great resource for helping you fill your schedule, okay? These patients just need a call back, okay? They need you to pick up the phone and give them a call. And now, if you're short-staffed right now, like a lot of you are, if you don't have the manpower, the bandwidth to make calls to these patients, then let's think about how can we incorporate some of our trusted partners that are on with us today, like a call force, reach out to call force and say, hey, we don't have time to work this report. Do you have the manpower to help us do that? And I can guarantee you they're going to say, sure, we can definitely help with that. And then think about how that can help fill your schedule. Okay. And then maybe, reaching out to these people, an automated system, with a Next Health or a Patient Engage, and how they could be sending out some of these automated text or email reminders. But these patients need follow-up, whether it's from you or whether it's from a third-party solution. We need to get these patients back in the schedule. And so, here are patients. This patient missed a comp exam and an FMX. You can see the note if there's a note in the appointment. And so if you're going to make calls from your own office, make calls in the office journal. Okay, super easy. Open up the office journal, make your call note, and then you have that documented. So the next person that comes in and is making calls to this list, they can see your notes. So you have a consistent place for making those follow-up calls, okay? So the unscheduled list is a great place to tap into patients who need to be rescheduled. So that's one list that needs attention weekly. The next one is the continuing care report. So the continuing care list is going to be looking for patients that are overdue for either their Profi or their perio maintenance, okay? So let me open up this list. And so what I would like for you to do when you get back to your practice, either tomorrow or Monday, is to open up this continuing care list and then click on where it says views. Okay, where it says views. Now, if you don't have any custom views in here, it might say next 3 months, or next month, or tomorrow, or today. Those are all the Dentrix default lists, okay? And in my opinion, we're not going to call patients that are that aren't due for 3 months, okay? We want to find patients that are overdue. We need to find patients that are overdue for their perio, overdue for their Profis, okay? So I created some custom lists in here, super easy to do, and this will streamline your system, okay? Keep it simple. So I have a list here, Profi 1 year overdue, and I just abbreviated it PD for past due. Profi 1 year past due, Profi 3 months past due, Profi or perio 1 year past due. So you can customize these lists so it makes it super simple to come in here and generate a list. Now, you might also know that I've got a list here that says Sally's list, okay? So when I was working in my dental practice, Oh gosh. So I started in my second dental practice in 94, and I was there for 18 years. And we had an amazing hygiene department. Catherine and Jennifer, our two hygienists, and then Sarah, our part-time hygienist. And so we had three hygienists in my practice. And so what I would do in my practice is I would create their own list. So I had Sarah's list, Jennifer's list, and Catherine's list. And the reason we could do that is because I had, patients liked to come in to see Jennifer. They wanted to see Catherine. And so here in the Provider 2 section of the family file, you can put in here who is the patient's preferred hygienist. So then when you want to generate your own continuing care list for that provider, then if, say, Catherine had, let's say a patient, missed an appointment for an hour and a half scaling and replaning. Catherine now had an hour and a half of time open, and our hygienists never clocked out. They always went to work. So they would go to the continuing care list and start calling patients. So they would open up the continuing care list, go up to their view, and select their own list. And then it would generate them a list of patients. It was so amazing. And you could do that too. So here's a list of patients that are overdue. Now, one thing I want to point out to you is these are patients who should be not scheduled, okay? But do you see in this appointment column here, do you see all these little pluses? Okay, but then some of the patients don't have a plus. All right, the patients without a plus are not scheduled. Okay, so they don't have an appointment on the appointment book. The patients with a plus here, they are scheduled for something. It could be a crown prep, could be a filling, but it could be their Profi. And remember when I said about the appointments, linking up Profi to the appointment, okay? If you don't have the continuing care linked up to the appointment, Dentrix doesn't think they're scheduled. So that's why they're coming up on this past due list that they're not scheduled. But you can see that there's a little plus here. So if you have patients that are coming up on the list that they have a little plus in that appointment column, then you might want to go in here, click on other appointments and see what they're scheduled for. Okay, so this patient is scheduled for an exam, but they're not scheduled for their Profi. So that's what that means. So your pro tip here is that this continuing care list, now this is the traditional list. There's also another list that I'm going to send you a tip sheet for. I'm not going to go into it tonight just because it takes a little bit more setup. This is the traditional continuing care list. And so this should be part of your weekly routine, part of your weekly workflow. And again, if you are finding that you are short-staffed and you don't have time to make calls to these patients, then we can look at those third-party softwares, look at patients look at solutions where they can give you some help, okay? Hiring a third-party software is not bad. They're there to help you. And they're a lot less expensive than salaries. And so, it's definitely something to think about. And then, another thing to think about is if you have a lot of patients on your overdue list and that they're not coming in because maybe they are a cash patient and they're strapped right now, or maybe they're out of work, then that's when a membership plan can definitely help to kickstart your continuing care system, because getting patients on this loyalty program is definitely a way to reduce the amount of patients that are on this list. Okay, so continuing care list and the unscheduled list, two reports that definitely need weekly attention. So the last thing I want to go through with you is how to find your patient retention. So like I talked about at the very beginning, patient retention is like one of the most important numbers, and it revolves around your continuing care system. So patient retention is defined as the amount or the percentage of patients that are recurring for their regular visit within a certain date range. And so typically we're going to look at that date range somewhere between 12 or 18 months. So in the Dentrix world, we go to the office manager and we go to the practice advisor report. One of my favorite reports in Dentrix. This is your monthly numbers meeting. So when you meet with your team at the end of the month or the beginning of the next month and you talk about your numbers, then the practice advisor is such a great way to go through that with your team. So the practice advisor report is, so when you open it up, if you've never run it before, then probably the first thing I would go to is go to the setup. And what I'm talking about how it tracks patient retention and how I know this number is like 100% accurate in Dentrix is that it looks at a continuing care type, which is also tied to a code. Okay. So I like to look here. This is the patients are counted for continuing care visits if their prior visit is within the last 18 months. Some offices will put 12 months in there. I put 18 months in there. And then when you go to your practice advisor report, then what you want to do is you want to select just your Profi and your perio, okay? Just those two continuing care types. We don't care about bite wings. We don't care about ortho. Okay, right now we're just talking about perio and Profi because that is going to dictate our patient retention. Now there's a lot of other settings in here. You can go through and select your providers and your billing types. I'm not going to go into all that detail because I already did that when we did our KPI. But this is where you're going to find your patient retention number. Okay. So let me show you what one of those reports would look like. Here is an example of a practice. Let me just blow this up just a little bit for you. So this practice that you can see has a patient retention of 77%. So it's that first line on the practice advisor on the third page, the continuing care page. So you can see 1,434 patients out of 1,852. So 77% retention rate, okay? So 23% of their patients are not coming back within the last 18 months. So there's a few things that we can think about, okay? A lot of those things that we just talked about, okay? So working your continuing care report, having those automated systems that NextHealth and Patient Engage can put together for you, having online booking, having live chat on your website for patients that want to book an appointment, having, if you are short-staffed, having someone like CallForce make calls for you, anything that you can do to stay connected to your patients. And so staying connected with our patients will increase that patient retention number, guaranteed. I mean, there's just no way that it wouldn't help it. And so the goal for patient retention is we want to see it upwards of upper 80s. We want to see it in the high 80%, low 90s. I think the highest I've ever seen it is a practice that I work with up in Seattle area. Their patient retention was 94%. And the lowest I've ever seen it was that practice that I mentioned earlier, 66%. So, so it's definitely just the lifeblood of your practice. We're going to start to wrap up. So like I said, as registered attendees, The amazing team at Dental Cast Productions is going to wrap a big bow around this recording within the next week or so that I can send it out to all of you. You all will start to receive an email from me within the next couple of hours with the first tip sheet. Just kind of with a summary of the things that we talked about today. And then the CE, I need to make sure that anybody that needs a CE certification code or a verification certificate, you may need to reach out to me directly and I'll make sure that you get a CE certificate. So going back to those slides, stay connected, online tools, and then use your Dentrix software with those tips that I gave you tonight, and your continuing care system will continue to flourish. I can guarantee it. I will be reaching out to all of you over the next week or so, just with some check-ins. I will check in with you, see how you're doing, see if you have any questions. Remember to scroll down in this page. Okay, so bookmark this page. And because this is also where you're going to find to tap into those partners that we talked about today. So if you need somebody to help you answer the phones, if you want live chat, if you want online booking, tap into those trusted partners that I brought on board with me for tonight's event, because I don't take that lightly at all. And I want to thank you all for being on with us tonight. I really appreciate all of you, and I look forward to my next event. All right, have a great evening. Cheers.